All right, so another thing, please, guys, if you have questions, I have two monitors here. So in one monitor, I have the chat panel and the participants list. So three ways to let me know if you have a question. You can either raise your hand or write a comment or a reaction or your questions on the chat panel, or unmute and interrupt me, please. It doesn't. I encourage you to interrupt me live. That's my preferred method. But if you want to use the chat panel, please do so. Or if you raise your hand, I'll be keeping an eye on the the Zoom controls. Um, I want you to ask me questions, please. Um, all right, so we are in Revit 2024, and so when you launch the project, when you launch Revit, this is the first things that you will see. Last class we discussed that Revit are subscriptions and they are associated with a name account. And your name, the name that the account is registered, is going to be displayed in the upper right corner. Without uh, without signing in, the software is not going to run. Active subscriptions allow you to have the software running for a year. The educational version runs for a year. Um, if your subscription expires, Revit still provide you the ability to display the viewer version. So in the window button under the Autodesk folder, you're going to see that there's a version of Revit that is called Revit Viewer. And the viewer, it's provides you all the functionalities of Revit um, installation, but you cannot save. So the viewer functionality is intended for somebody who just wants to peruse the content of a model, inspect it or print, but you don't want to save anything. So occasional users whose role is just, keep an eye on how the project is evolving or provide quality control observations can easily just use the viewer without consuming a license. That's something to keep to be reminded. Um, I'm not going to launch it, but it's there. The other thing is I have Revit 2024.2. I don't, which has the point two, which is a preview, which is a incremental update. Incremental update, I think I showed you last time, is available to you when you downloaded the app Autodesk Access. So in the tray drop in the tray menu, which is in the lower right side, there's a little menu that looks like that has the symbol of Autodesk in the middle of it, and that gives you access to the Autodesk Access, which is an application that pretty much act like I don't know how many of you have an iPhone, but when you update apps, you go to the App Store, right? And then it tells you that you need an app to update all the applications. This is a similar concept, only that it's exclusive for Autodesk applications. And so this lists all the software incremental updates that you have available or extensions that are available to you at no cost that are coming from Autodesk and compatible with the version of the software you have. In order to install these updates, I think you need to have administration rights to your machine. I don't know if IT allow you to do that. Hopefully it does. But If you want to have Revit 22.2, you can install it via the Autodesk Access. You don't have to do it now because it's going to take some time, but you can do it tomorrow or before the next class. It's not critical that we have the point 2, but between releases and releases, Revit, Autodesk, these incremental releases provide you hot fixes for things that aren't working very well, or we release 1 or 2 new functionalities to give you a preview of what's coming. So the incremental release is both a way to fix things that weren't cut for the former release and give you a preview of a few functionalities that are coming in the next release. And one of those functionalities that are part of 2024.2 is this little button here, this switch, um, which is the Revit New Home. Uh, it's a little toggle that when you press it, uh, it changes the way the history of files is displayed in the welcome home. Again, you're only going to see this if you have 2024.2. If you don't have it, not biggie, but let me show you what it works. When I enable the switch, now not only I have a larger history of files in my list of thumbnails, but I can also have multiple ways of displaying information and sort it. You can do this with big icons, thumbnails, or you can do it with a list view, which I actually like it this way because it allows you to disclose the name of the project, when it was last modified, and where it's saved, right? And so, and the type of model it is, whether it's a standalone model, whether it's a family, or whether it's a central file, and it discloses the size. Um, and you can search up to 30, I believe. You can search also by metadata here, for example, year, and it's going to search all the projects that had that metadata. Um, and the other thing is, if you work on a daily basis in 2 or 3 projects, you can also pin the model. Like you can right click, you can click on a model, hit the push pin icon in the pin button, and then that's always going to be available in this list. What happens here is after you hit 20 files, the older files are going to start disappearing. You always keep on a maximum of 20 files. But if you don't want that to happen, if you don't want the project to disappear, you can disable the push pin. This is a new thing in Revit. The other thing is that inside here, there's an area that is called Autodesk Projects. And this give you this display the cloud sharing projects that you're part of. You've been invited to a team of a stakeholder that it's working on central file hosted in the cloud using BIM Collaborate Pro or BIM 360. And so those projects are going to be available here, and then you can open cloud projects directly from the user interface. I only have 3 projects for these accounts. These are different accounts that I'm part of. And you're only going to see projects where 2024 is used. So say, for example, you work in 2020 in a project, you're part of a team that's working in Revit 2022. In the cloud, you're not going to see that project listed here because the file's in a different version. So the list of projects is project specific. And the other thing, this is also new in Revit 2024, is this tab called My Insights. So My Insights, it's a machine learning database that keep track of how you use Revit. It's you're like a personal assistant that identify what are how you work, uh, and it classify the commands that you execute on Revit by type, and then it presents you with a list of features that you might have not explored. So, for example, I teach a lot. I have a lot of everything, a little of everything. Um, and if you detect if the inside detect you probably using you could be using something in a more efficient way, then it provides you with these feature recommendations, which are nuggets of tips and tricks or links to a new workflow or things that you may have not tried. So this list is different from person to person. It only start kicking in after you have a month of activity. So it needs some data to learn from. So you're not gonna probably on your end, this is empty, you don't see anything. But let's check back in at the end of the month, at the end of this course, and you're gonna start seeing this. Um, all right, the other thing is the help file. So in the upper right side corner, you see this button with a question mark. That is the help file. And the help file is a web page that describe all the features and capabilities of Revit in and explain it. So, and it's pretty good actually. It also have, if you are, for those who are starting in Revit, it has these three sections. And what's new in Revit, essential skills are like video, short videos demonstrating basic capabilities. UI interface tour. We're gonna do this today. But it has also a link to like best practices for all different types of elements. And when it comes to capabilities related to site design, I think they will be under architectural design, uh, under conceptual design. Um, what I do much easier is to search by keyword. Let's say I search Topo Solid, which is the new surface functionality. Topo Solid. Here it is. It's under model layout, model design, model layout, site design. So here on site design, these are great references on how the capabilities work. If I miss explaining in 8 weeks, we're not going to cover everything in this list. So there are topics that I may not cover in great detail, but this is your go-to reference to discover how the commands work. For example, how you create levels, what are grids, how you create grids, different type of grids, and it has a little video. Here's how you add grids. It's pretty robust. Not a lot of people give it a lot of value, but it's pretty a good. It's a really good reference, in particular when you are starting. And then there's also um, ways to troubleshoot issues. Um, okay, so that's you can also in the middle of in the if you're in the middle of a session, you can also kick the F1 key, and it will launch the software well. The other thing is uh, this doesn't come often, but sometimes when you're troubleshooting and you're talking with somebody out of this, they're going to ask you to provide the serial number and the full version number. And that information, if you click this drop-down list, is about Revit 2024.2. So it's right here. This is the serial number here. This is the version, and this is like the number of the installation. And this is information that they ask you when they are supporting you. Autodesk products now only works if you're connected to the internet. So in the past, we used to have this ability to borrow a license to access the software offline. We no longer have that. So it's not difficult. I think most workplaces, everywhere home, we are connected to Wi-Fi. And so be aware of that. Okay. I'm going to go back to the recent display and start talking about how to open files. Check this little button here in the upper right side that looks like a panel. That allows you to switch to the main menu without opening a file. That's how you switch to and in here we have access to the ribbon display. So this whole thing here is the main ribbon. And a ribbon is made of three components. It has the tabs, the panels, and the commands. This is these are the different tabs. I may have one or two tabs extra that you don't see on your end because those are custom integrations that I've installed on my own. But you have file, architecture, annotate, collaborate, massing, add-ins, etc. And then you have the panels and commands. This is a panel of build of commands related how to model. The name of the panel is build. This is the panel related to model element. This is the panel of opening. This is the panel of workplace. And then inside every panel, you have the commands. So these are commands for creating stairs, commands for creating rooms, commands to create openings and work planes. And so I am going to, at the beginning of the course, to help you navigate in the user interface, I'm going to call out commands in the following way. I'm going to mention, go to the View tab, create panel, 3D view, or go to the architectural tab, build panel, walls, or go to the insert panel, link, insert tab, link panel, manage links. So mentally, that's going to help you navigate the user interface. Later on, when you memorize where the commands are, I'm just going to say, go to the wall commands, and you probably have memorized it a month from now. But to get started, I'm going to call out the commands. All right, so for today, we're going to use one of the Autodesk files. Prior to Revit 2024, we used to ship Revit with multiple out-of-the-box models, but then we realized that um, you occupy too much space in your C drive. And so starting this year, those models are uh, provided to you in a web page. So they're actually in the help file. So I'm going to put in the chat panel a link to this out of the box list. Um, I want to make you aware that in 2024, we release a new data set that is multidisciplinary, and we actually paid actual consultants, really high profile consultants, to develop this project for us. It's a project that is probably at the middle of the design development phase, where we contract an architectural firm and actual subcontractors, not only to create a real project, but also to put it together as an exemplary execution Revit model. So if you want to have a, if you want to take a peek on a real project, you can download it here. It also provide, this is Snowdon Towers. It's a row of commercial development in an historic district in Pennsylvania. Um, these are commercial. This is a commercial row from the early 1900s, and we hire a point cloud specialist who capture the existing conditions and then translate the point cloud into Revit models. And so it's a good reference one. It has also a site model for us who are doing landscape or site design. We're going to use it, but not today. And then it has the models, the traditional models that ship with Revit, the single residence, a school. This one is a residential house or a mixed-use house for construction that we commissioned to a German architect. This is super detailed, and it's in metric and it's all in German, so you might not understand all of the terms. But I mean, I admire Germans and the way they go around detailing. Everything is contained in this model, all the detail of the assemble. So this is a good example of a mature stage of Revit development where you utilize it for pre-construction, construction documentation, fabrication, etc. And then, early design development models for the trades, etc. So the one we're going to use today is this one, the Rack Basic Sample Project. It has an interesting site. And when you hit this, it's going to download it. See this, depending on the of the browser you have, notify you when it's complete. It places the model in the download folder. Um, go into Windows Explorer and go to the downloads folder, which is under the PC, your PC. I have it here. I'm going to move it somewhere else because I usually delete a lot of these files. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it in my D drive where I have more space. And I'm going to create a new folder here. I'm going to call it Revit 2024 Group B. And then inside this folder, I'm going to place that file. It's a small file, it's only 19 kilobytes. I'm going to take that one bracket out of this. All right. Any question? Nobody. Okay. First, first piece of advice. Um, in um, in Revit, we have several type of files. We have here is, I think I was showing it here. We have standalone models, which are Revit projects created by a user and only accessed by that user. We have families. That a family is a custom loadable component that we bring from a library into our model. For example, like single doors or furniture or entourage families. And then we have models that are connected to the cloud. This is a central model. Um, and if the model is individual, like the one we just downloaded, you can go ahead and double click it and open it. You double click it and opens the file. But if the file is work share, like if the file is part of a central model repository, you never open those files. The way work sharing works is that uh, there's a central file living in the cloud. And then when you open a local file, Revit creates a mirror image of that central file in the cloud and then place it in your workstation. And so the proper way of opening cloud models is to access the Autodesk project tab and then navigate to the project you're invited and navigate to the Autodesk docs list of projects. And so my first pointer here is that you only double click files when you are absolutely sure that you are the only person that is using it. And in the context of a work share environment where multiple people access the same project, you open it via the user interface. Okay, so we're gonna do.
Quick question, Cesar, on regarding that last comment. Is it possible that two people can work in the same file at the same time?
Um, the thing with work share model is that that's exactly the goal. We access a central model, and then 7, 8 people access the central file at the same time. And so the changes that you make are first saved in your local file, and then the local file changes are synchronized to the central file. So the power of a work share environment is that multiple people work in the same central file using local files. But sometimes if you navigate, for example, Autodesk docs via, and we're going to talk about this later, but there's a way to mirror the content of the cloud repository as a drive, like you do in Google Drive. And oftentimes, I think I have it here, is the Autodesk. Um, yeah, Autodesk doc is here. These are my projects. These are my projects on the cloud. Um, and then I can display the projects or the files that are in the cloud. And so what I was saying is that this model here is a central file. And this file, which is living in the docs folder,
Mm-hmm.
should not be opened directly from here. Because then you're open a central file and you're probably breaking the central file ability to
I'll share.
the work sharing. And so the
Mm-hmm.
other people may start receiving notifications that you cannot access it. And so central files should only be opened via the user interface Autodesk products, not via Windows Explorer. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if you do it via the user interface, then yes, multiple people can access a central file at the same time, because that's one of the core values of a work share environment. We have a whole class about work sharing, so we'll talk more about that in a few classes ahead. Okay, so yeah, so if you're absolutely sure that this is a standalone model, then you can just double click it like I did, like I suggested. Um, and another thing you can do is just grab the Revit project and drop it in the user interface, and it will open it for you. Um, let's go ahead, all of us, and open it. And this is Revit looking at the tile sheet. Um, so let's discuss some of the part of the user interface. I already told you how to navigate through the tabs, the panels, and the commands, um, and the ribbon. The tabs at the top disclose or group commands that are similar. Um, you can customize what tabs are visible to you. Let me show you how. So you go to the File tab, you click the File tab here, you're going to see the option bar here, options. Um, open the options dialog box, and then go to the user interface. Notice how I already switched off tabs that are not relevant for the landscape trade. So most likely you're not going to be creating big beams and foundations, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, um, energy analysis, infrastructure. So you can switch off the list, in particular MEP. You can switch off the parts of the user interface that you're never going to use. It's just taking space on your um, on your UI, and then hit OK. The other thing I'm going to ask you to do is look at how my user interface is dark, and probably on your end it's white. This is a new functionality in Revit. It's called user interface themes, and so I like it black and white because it helps with my sad, tired eyes. Um, and you can switch it via options as well. Go to File, Options, and then go to User. You go to Colors, and this is a new command in Revit 2024, which is dark theme or light theme. Light theme. Um, Staring at a white screen, it makes my eyes uh, make my eyes tired. So I prefer dark theme. I don't know. You choose how you want to work. These are colors, active theme, dark. Um, all right. The other thing around the options bar is um, notice that when I hover over a command, it gives me these tooltips describing what the command does. These tooltips comes in different flavors. Like you can tell Revit that just display the name of the command, or display the name of the command and describe what it is, or display the name of the command, describe what it is, and show me how it works. And then it actually even plays sometimes a little video for you. And so on the options bar again, File, Options, under the user interface, there's an option here that says Tooltip Assistance. If you're an expert and you know everything, maybe you just change it to none. And then it has three levels of information: minimal, normal, and high. You pick where you feel comfortable. I think to get started in Revit, I will use either minimal or normal. Um, I'm gonna I'm gonna keep it minimal on my end.
Meaning
Uh,
that high would be they'd give you more tool tips as you're working versus normal.
yeah, I'll show you. You know, if I switch to high
Mhm.
and I go to the walls command, you see it has this big image, uh, and it display how the command works. Sometimes it has animations. Um, for me as an instructor, it's a little distracting,
Mhm.
but for somebody who's learning on your end, it's you may want to keep it on. Uh, yeah, pick your poison. See what you feel comfortable. But I think in this class, it might be too distracting to see this every time you're hitting a command. In particular, when we're moving in a relatively quick pace.
Okay.
Um, so I'm gonna go back and keep it minimal for now.
Just had a question on how to access the file that you're looking at right now. Is
Yeah,
that on is that on Cloud Model or is that on where is that file located? I can't find it in the Cloud Model. I don't have access to the Cloud Model for some reason.
I put a link in the chat panel
I see.
uh, and download it from here.
I see.
Is the rack-based example project. It will put it on the download folder.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so what else? Okay, the first command we're going to learn is this one. This is the default 3D view, and we're going to use it a lot. Like we want to switch from a projection view to a 3D orthogonal view of the entire site. You just click that little house. Um, and let's do it together. Switch to this, and this switch to an isometric in the southwest corner, and it display everything about that model. Um, uh,
How did you get there again?
this house, the icon of the house in the quick access bar.
Okay.
Um, all right, let's talk about the additional parts of the user interface. This is the property windows. Um, and these panels should always be visible in your project. Uh, it lists, when you have nothing selected, it lists the properties of a view. Um, when you select something in Revit, it lists the property of that object. So right now I pick this plant or this tree, and it tells me information about that plant. If I select the topography, it gives me information about that topography. When I have nothing selected, it just gives me the property of the view. Um, the other part that is always on is this panel, is the project browser. And so Revit, what it does is that segment the model in different world planes. It's like you grab a knife and you start slicing the model in floor plans, which is a horizontal cut, uh, a section, which is a vertical cut, or elevations or section, which is a projection view orthogonal to the model. And all those views are on display in the project browser. But the project browser also contains information about sheets. Here are some sheets available. There are 5 sheets in this little project. Let's open one. Let's open the site plan. And to open one, you just double click the icon. It also has a schedule. And look at, there's a schedule here that's called planting schedule. So double click it. And the schedule is a tabular display of elements and parameter values of those elements in a schedule format. Uh, and also has families. Families are, it's a collection of objects that represent a geometry, and it has classified by different categories, and those categories are listed under the family thing. Think of this as your library of content ready to be used, loaded into your project, and that you can drag and drop into this project. There are other things we'll talk later, like groups and links. But the project browser is how you navigate through all the views in the project. And so when you start opening, let's open an elevation and a section. Let's open like the south elevation. This is a projection view to a 3D model. And let's open the building section. This is like a cut through the model. So all these views are segregated by type. You have floor plans, 3D views, elevations, sections, detail views, renderings, etc. And so all these different view tabs, all these different view types are reflected in the view in the view tab. So this is the view tabs. And notice these are all the views that I double click in the project browser, and they are available for me. When you open a view, it stays open. And so notice when I go to the sheet, notice that there is a little icon that looks like a sheet. And so this is a visual cue that the view you're working on is living under the sheet section of the project browser. Look at the 3D view. The 3D view has an icon that looks like a house. The house is an icon of a camera view. And those camera views are under the 3D views here. So that house is a 3D view. Look at the planting schedule. It has an icon that looks like a little schedule, and that is reflected here. That is a schedule. And then look at the elevations. Forget the south elevation, then it has an icon that looks like elevations. And so and this is a section, and it has a little icon that looks like a section. And so all these different views, you can understand where they are in the project browser just by looking at the icon they belong to. All right.
Curious about when you're referring to project browser, is that the column on the left-hand side?
Yeah, that's this.
Okay. And does that browser exist anywhere else besides the way it shows up in this format?
Right now it's stuck on the left side, and you can switch, these 2 windows can be switched off by clicking the X. And sometimes, sometimes we close it by accident. If this happens, the way to bring them back is, well, the project browser has a shortcut. If you type pp, there's the property panel. You just type it on the fly. Notice that Revit is missing something that's very common in AutoCAD, and it doesn't have command uh, command panel, meaning that while it has shortcuts, you cannot see them being be typed anywhere in the user interface. So you just type it on the fly. So the
Hmm.
shortcut to bring the properties is PP. It brings it back the property panel.
Okay.
And then to bring the project browser, it's a right-click operation. You go to the space of a view, you right-click, and then browser, project browser, and that
Okay.
brings the project.
Thanks.
Um, um, okay, but uh, if you have a laptop and a monitor, I
Hmm.
recommend you that these maximize your area of modeling and
Hmm.
bring the property panel and the project browser in that other screen. And the way you do that is that you hit the property head, that I call head at the top of the panel.
Hmm.
You click on this and drag out, and that's going to make the property panel float. And then you can move it into your other monitor, or if you prefer, you can stack it to the right side,
Hmm.
like a, or you can like the project browser. I'm going to detach it, and you can move it to the other monitor as well. Um, I need you to see the panel, so I'm not going to put in my other monitor. Um, so I'm going to stack the property window on top of the project browser. The way I do this is I drag this from the panel head, and then I drop it right below here. You see that preview? That blue preview is telling me that's the final size of the property window. And then I have it one on top of another one.
Okay. This is a probably an annoying question. How do you, is there a way to reconfigure the way that the the items show up in the project panel? What if I wanted like 3D view at the top versus floor, the way this is kind of organized, floor plans, 3D view, etc. Is there a way to restructure that so that you have whatever you think is priority to be at the top versus at the bottom?
Absolutely. The organization of the project browser, it can be completely customized. And in fact, when it comes to have uh, robust projects, they can be changed very differently.
Mhm.
Um, let's see.
But the way it is now is kind of an automated process that Revit makes up for you.
Yeah, right now the views are organized by default in this way. Um, if I right click on the views, you see browser organization.
Mhm.
We're gonna go into this later, but you can uh, organize instead of display everything, you can organize it by discipline. And now the parameter of architecture, if this is multidiscipline project, then you can list your disciplines here, structural, MEP, or you
Mhm.
can do it by phase if there are, phase one, phase two, phase three. Right now, this project doesn't have phases. Or you can organize it by view type and discipline. That's the default one. Um, or the sheets that are views that are orphaned, that they don't live in sheets. Then this is the list of views that are not part of any sheet. You can customize this, create new definitions. For now, let's keep it all. Um, and when we get to CDs, I'm going to show you how to best organize this for larger projects.
Okay.
Uh, okay. Um, then, okay, let's talk about select and cancel. So when you select something in Revit, it it highlights the element in a different color. You see how the topography is blue, and it opens something that is called the contextual tab. And the contextual tab contains a list of commands that are specific for editing, changing, or modifying that element. The only command available here is this one that says generate topos solid. But let's pick another one. To deselect, click escape, and that takes me back to the normal user interface. Let's pick the roof, for example. This is the contextual tab of the roof. And these are all the commands in that contextual tab. And so these are ways to change, modify, or edit a roof. To deselect, click escape, escape. Let's pick a plant. Let's pick this tree. And so this is the contextual tab of the ways to modify and change a plant. And so the commands are really specific. The way you modify elements are really specific to the type of assembly. So Revit has commands that are unique for the type of assembly. So there are some commands. If I select wall, you have all these commands that are just specific for walls. If you select a roof, these are things that are specific for stairs. And so if you select a railing, these are commands that are specific to a railing. And so this is a concept of nesting commands um, or displaying the command by selection. And there isn't a lot of software that works this way. If you are an AutoCAD user, if you remember, if you're probably used to this, right? You have a user interface that is full of toolbars, and these toolbars always stay on. I mean, you can choose to switch those off. But AutoCAD don't have this concept of contextual commands or command that are unique to an object. And so what I like about that concept is that it saves a lot of it optimize the user interface because it's not crowded with tons and tons of commands.
Mm-hmm.
But the difficult part of it is that um, if you're trying to remember a command that is contextual, it is only going to show when you select it. For example, uh, when I select a wall, there is a command called edit profile or attach top to base. If you try to find that command in your brain, the attach top to base, you're not going to find it anywhere here. It's not going to be visible until you select a wall and then you find it. And so it takes a while to get familiar with contextual commands. They are only discoverable when you select the object uh, that it modifies.
I was curious how Revit handles conditions where, it's atypical conditions where the wall becomes horizontal, like a roof, or the roof becomes horizontal, like the ground plane. How does it separate the two conditions?
It's a common it's common to do that. For example, look at this is a roof and it's flat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then a wall. This is vertical, but I can create a wall representation that is horizontal as well. We we do that by creating component in place, component in place. And when you do component in place, this applies to any category. You can create roofs that are vertical, or you can create walls that are horizontals using this command.
Mm.
We will when we're in modeling, we're gonna discuss more about this.
Okay. So that's something that's user dictated, not dictated by Revit.
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, okay, so I was talking about contextual tabs and contextual commands. Um, let's talk about navigating in this 3D. Notice that I've been like zooming in and out how I do this. So the mouse wheel uh, allow me to zoom in when I do it and zoom out. Easy, right? Pan, which is moving in the vertical horizontal, press the mouse wheel and you see the cursor that turns into this plus sign. This allows me to pan up or pan down. This icon here on the upper right side, which is common to all Autodesk products, this is the navigation box. And you can click on the vertice of this box and you can switch the isometric location, the viewpoint. You can also look at underneath, needed, or you can switch it to a projection view, top, left, right, front, and back. Uh, I think this is common in AutoCAD as well nowadays, and Inventor, all the Autodesk product has this navigation box. Um, these uh, arrows in the upper right side allow me to rotate the view 90 degrees, either clockwise or counterclockwise. Um, and
Caesar, is there a command that allows us to orbit around the model without having to use that little icon in the top right?
yes, I was about to show you that.
Okay,
This
great.
is this is a shortcut that you should always use. And this is orbit. And the way I do this is you click orbit and memorize this because you're going to use it a lot. It's well shift plus mouse click, mouse wheel, or shift shit shift plus right click. And you keep those things pressed and move the mouse. That's going to allow you to orbit relative to a pivot point that is associated with all the geometrical center of Revit. Um, and I use it all the time. So panning, zooming, and orbit is your way to move around the model. I've been using this for a long time. So I zoom in, I pan, I orbit, zoom out, pan, zoom in, when you select an object and you orbit, the pivot point is the center. Uh, I'm sorry, Alexa is talking. Alexa, cállate. I must have say Alexa in my speech here. When you when you select an object, then and you orbit, the pivot point is the geometrical center of that object. Try that. Pick a tree, and then shift mouse wheel, and then the pivot point is the center point of that tree. Pick the topo. When you orbit mouse wheel, that's the center point of it.
Another question related to this, probably maybe we can discuss it later because I think it might be too complicated to explain now. But a lot of the projects that I'm working on where the architect is working through Revit, and we have world coordinates that are based on a survey. For some reason, they struggle to snap to the same world coordinates that we have in AutoCAD, and we get files often from the architect that are way off base from the world coordinates. And I'm wondering how, why that happens, because it, it it doesn't make sense to us why we get a file that's just in the wrong location when it snaps into our files.
Oh yeah, that is that is a good question. It's not easy answer. That requires an entire class on shared coordinates, and we have. I think that's our first class coming up. Shared coordinates when we set up a project from scratch. So we don't talk about that on Monday. So hold on that. I'm gonna hold on that question, put it on the parking lot, and we'll talk about shared coordinates on Monday. It's a big topic. Um, um, but yeah, it's learning how to anchor the model, your model with disciplines is one of the first things in a BIM execution plan, and it requires a very careful mapping of who provides the source of alignment and what is the method that everyone's going to follow, because there are several methods. You can either acquire the shared coordinate from a source, you can publish it, or you can import it from an AutoCAD file. Who leads the directive on how models are anchored is a big part of a BIM execution plan, and I'll talk more about it on Monday. All right, so selection, right? Selection. I want you to notice that when you move your mouse on top of the model, things pre-highlight. This is pre-selection. You haven't even selected anything, and Revit start asking, "You want this? You want this? You want this? You want this? You want this?" Right? And so if you put your mouse for more than 1 second on top of an element, it's going to display a tooltip with a piece of information. So this thing here, this is the tooltip, and it reads roof, basic roof, SG, metal panel roof, blah, blah, blah. And then this same information is listed here. What is this? So this is how Revit classify the geometry in a tier system in basically 3 levels. The category, the family, and type. So let me pull a slide for that. A category in Revit is a collection of parameters that are common to a geometry. An example, columns. All columns have a material. They are hosted in a level. They have a height. They have an analytical line that represents the force. And they all columns in Revit are created very similar. Categories in Revit are given by Revit. You don't create them. Categories are fixed. It's a fixed set of classification system. And so I'm going to write this down, and I'm going to ask you this question on Monday. Categories cannot be created. They are given by Revit. And categories, the most important, there are 2 importances of categories. The first one is that it defines the line weights of everything. So when we assign line weights to elements in 3D, they are assigned by categories. So all columns are going to have like a certain line weight display on a cut. And so that's one of the importance of the categories. And the other importance of a category is that that's how you enable the visibility, or you switch things in the project on and off in views using categories. So that's the two importance of a category. You assign line weights, and second, you also switch visibility. For example, when we are creating different type of views in a construction plan, for example, we don't want to see furniture. There's a furniture plan that is played, so we switch off the category of, of, of furniture. Or for example, if I'm doing a construction plan and there's a lot of people inside or entourage, that usually never part of a construction plan. You switch off the category of entourage. And then the line weight of walls, for example, when a wall is cut by a plane at 4 feet above ground, they receive a specific line weight, and that line weight, which is a value from 1 to 16, is associated with the category via is associated to the geometry via category. But anyway, categories define a set of properties. Then a family, I'm going to write that here as well. A family, it's a collection of objects with same properties and same physical representation. An example here is, you have round columns. All round columns are round. All rectangular columns are rectangular. They share similar properties. They all have a height. They all have a material. They all are represented with the same line weight, but they have a different physical representation, and that's why you have two different types of families. Another example is, for example, doors. You have a category of doors. All doors have a panel. They have a swing. They have a width, height, thickness. Those are common parameters. But then you have single flush doors. You have double doors. They are different representations of a door, and that's why they are two different families. And then the type is a member of a family with a unique value. It's a member of a family with a unique parameter value. And so in this example, you have round columns that are 6 inches, that's one type. Column that is 8 inches, that's another type. 1 feet, that's another type. And then rectangular column as well. 2 by 1, 12 by 6, 6 by 8. That's all of those are different types of columns.
Is there any opportunity to have like unique conditions where maybe it's a mash of two things, like round and rectangular in one column kind of thing, or just something that's an anomaly? How do you handle those?
Yeah, then you create a new family. If the new family is a combination of, I don't know, you have like a pier on top, a below, and on top of the pier you have a metal thing. That's a new family, but that has its own unique representation. Yeah, this is a simplification just to convey the meaning, but families, you can create new families with new physical representations, but they all be under the same category. And so when in Revit, that tooltip that I was showing you earlier, display that information exactly. So you have a category disclosed by the tooltip, separated by a column, and then you have the family name separated by a column, and then the type. We'll just right out here on the top. So in Revit, when I hover over this wall, it tells me, that's the category of wall, family basic wall, and the type is CLW1, R1. Let's see another one. Let's see this plant. The category is planting. The family name is RPC tree dash deciduous, and the type is honey locust 25 feet. And so these classification system is the way the family is organized in the project browser. So if you go to the family section in the project browser, here it is. This is organized by, I'm going to go to the planting ones, P, planting. Planting is the category. If you click the plus sign, it discloses the families loaded in the category. And if I click again, these are all the different types. So I have oaks, red maples, Lombardy, honey locust.
So the families will then be, I guess, used to generate schedules. Is that right?
This is correct. You create a schedule by category. For example, the schedule that you saw here, this schedule, is a schedule of the category of plants. So this search for all the plants in the project that are part of the category of plants, and then you list it in a tabular display.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we have control over listing it by botanical name or common name.
Yeah, so these the plants display parameters. These parameters, you can use some of the parameters to display additional data. Like in comments, I can add like generic name, or I can add additional information to custom information to this plant. So I am disclosing here all the type parameters of that tree, and that includes, this is the CSI assembly code. This is the description. This is how it's tagged in floor plan. The city is tree, blah, blah. And you can extend it with your own custom parameters as needed. We're going to
How
get
did you
to
bring that dialog box up?
Yeah, this is the edit properties. You select the tree first, and then go to the edit type. And these are the type parameters or type properties. Type properties are properties that are common to all the elements of the same type. So every honey locus 25 feet this is the list of parameters. These are out of the box parameters, but we can create custom parameters. And we have a whole class dedicated to custom parameters, maybe in week 3 or 4, I think. When we talk about schedules, I'm going to show you how to add more parameters to things.
I'm curious if there's a way to link specifications to the family types.
Revit has Revit has something that's called the Omni class. It also has assembly codes. Assembly codes are, in this particular example, uniformat. But there are databases that you can get online that give you a classification by master format or by Omni class. And so this information contained in this database travels with the data with this. And so you can schedule this data and it disclose certain information. But I think you're asking if I want to open like the 3-part specification. That doesn't do it out of the box, but there are plugins that allow you to do that. I think, what's that major one? Haven't used it in a while, but I'll find out what those are. There's a plugin for Revit that works similar like this, but you double click here and it opens the 3-part specs.
Right.
You can use the code number to create details or to describe the details.
Right.
Think
Yeah. I mean, the general question is how can we begin to integrate what we write as specs and how they are represented in the drawing, and how do they link to each other if that's possible, so that you can, seemingly open up a Revit model and click on, let's say, tree or wall, and it takes you to the specification section for that particular item.
yeah, it doesn't do it out of the box, but you can we can do it with third-party add-ons. Let me see. I think it's BSD specs, SpecLink, SpecLink. I don't know if you guys used this before. Architects use it a
No.
lot. SpecLink, Revit, beam interaction with SpecLink. So
Ooh, cool.
it's a third-party add-on that connects each geometry in Revit with a 3-part spec.
Right on. Okay, it's possible. That's good.
Yeah, it's possible. When we talk about, again, there's a class that is just focused on data. We're going to talk there about tagging, uh, keynoting, uh, uh, master format, classification systems, and I mentioned specs there as well. Okay. So Anton, you're you're with me on sound, right? I just read
Yeah.
your note.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay. All righty. So I was talking about the category, family, and type. So I want to make sure you're not sleeping on me. I'm going to ask some questions. So based on the information you see on the screen, hopefully it's readable. What is the family name of these three? And you can either speak up or you can type it on the chat panel. Family name, just based on the tooltip information. Any taker?
Planting? Or is it RPC tree?
RPC3 deciduous. Planting is the category.
Right.
RPC3 deciduous. Good job, Jeremy. Good job, Diana. What is the type name of this? The type name of
Beetle.
MRPCBO, that's correct. What is the category of this?
Site.
All right. And so, if you wanna find this in the project browser, then you just go to the family browser, go to the site, main wall power generators, and then you just drag it and drop it into the project, and I got a new one. So that's like a visual way to tell you, hey, if you want more of these instances, find it using this tier system in the project browser. Let's one more. This is a little tricky. What is the type name of this roof?
Gable.
It's
R1.
yes and no. There are some families that have subcategories. Not all of them have subcategories, but these have 4 pieces of information. It has the the categories roof, the family name is basic roof, type name is SG panel, and then the subcategory is R1.
Oh my God.
But if you, yeah, so if I go to the roof here, roof, basic roof, SG panel, notice that the subcategory is not listed. So I can create a new roof. The subcategory is only relevant um, when it comes to display visibility. So I'm going to talk that in a bit today.
Yeah, it's not that intuitive to remember. I would want to say that it's a gable roof first, and then go from there, and then it's
Yeah,
metal. You know, kind
yeah.
of like the form and then material kind of thing, and then a code. Is is that possible?
No, like I was saying earlier, categories are fixed, and the way we create families and name families, that's something we can control. And the way we name doors, we name types is also under control. But at the base, like at the top tier, the categories like this list, we cannot customize it. Um, there are standards we use to create families. We have a class about family creation. I can show you some of those standards. Basically, it says that you know, just like doors, you describe the family, uh, describe the family like single flush door, and then you name the type after some parameter values. Like in this case, is the size of the panel.
Mhm.
And then for there are different rules that are common, that are typical classification systems in the built environment that we should follow. But again, yeah, this model was created by a programmer in Autodesk. It's not the best example of how we name families. Um, I'll bring a project that is a little more, or the model that I have. Yeah, the model that you find here, it's a little better structure. This node on tower.
Mhm.
I'll pull it up in a different class.
Okay.
Okay, so how we bring content. So right now we've been just looking at the UI. If I want to bring a family, all I need to do is drag and drop. So let's drag some content. Go to planting category um, in the family browser, in the project browser, RPC trees, and bring Scarlet Oak. The way you place a family is you drag it from the project browser and then you drop it. Uh, Plants always snap to the top surface of topo surfaces. I'm going to drag another tree here. Um, and Hawthorne 24. These are the families that are loaded in the project. Um, and right now I am in shading mode, and they look really like raw. This is like a wireframe representation that it's not very pretty. But um, let's start a little discussing a little bit about these. These commands here are called view controls, and the view controls, like the name suggests, change the way a view is displayed for the user. So here you can change the scale of the view, the graphic properties. Here you can render, you can apply shadows, light. Um, you can turn things on and off. Um, so the view control everything inside of view. And one of the view controls that I want to show you is this one. It's the second icon from the lower left. Is the visual style. Um, a question here, how to bring the project browser. If the project browser is turned off, right click on a view and go to browser, project browser. And that brings it back. If Did I work, Mike? Let me know.
No, can you show me again?
Click on the white space in the view and go browsers.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, browser.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so you go to planting, RPC, tree, grab any of those, drag it and drop it. Oh, I was talking about the visual style. So visual styles, and I mean, for the visual styles, I'm going to switch to, no, I'm going to keep it like that. This is wireframe. You know, wireframe is good if you want to see through. You can change it to hidden line. You know, so that it looks a little better. I'm gonna switch. Yeah, I'm gonna switch the UI to light just to demonstrate this feature. You don't have to do this. I'm gonna switch the UI to light. So this is shaded. Shaded has add some color. The color you see for each of the elements, it's assigned by the material. Like this roof has a red color embedded in the material definition. And shaded, if you notice, assumes a generic light in the distance that it's always on the right. And so I rotate this, and the light is always located on the right side of the model, and it creates shades. That's why it's called shaded. You see how the back of the house has the shade. The next one is called consistent color. Consistent color remove the shade out of the shaded view, and there's no more shade anymore. Now the color is consistent no matter the orientation. It turned off the light, the distant light that it's out there. There's another one called textures, and this is new in Revit 2024. Texture displays the JPEG or the material texture of without applying light bouncing. It makes it look like a little bit like there's a mode in, I don't know if you are a SketchUp user, but in SketchUp there's a mode where you can display textures without light bouncing. So it gives this quality of like it's a little bit schematic, but not too realistic. And then the realistic view actually start applying light, light bouncing, and it's like a preview of a render. This actually enable shadows and display textures at a higher quality. This consumes RAM, and because I'm on a live stream, it's getting better. And notice when I switch to realistic, all the trees change because now they're not displaying the wireframe information, they're actually displaying the texture maps associated with that. Notice also the texture applied to the topo surface. There's a question, what graphic display do I work on? It depends on what view I have. So if I am doing construction plans, always hidden line. If I am doing modeling in 3D, like working modeling, I like shaded. And then if I am rendering, then I switch to realistic.
Question about the trees. You know, we'll specify anywhere between like a 15 gallon to, 24, 48, 60-inch box, 72-inch box. Is there a way to automate the family of that tree or type to include the box size?
Yeah, it is. Um, Let me see if I can find that.
beneath. And you mentioned that the tree maps out at finished surface, but the box size would be below finished surface. But
Yeah,
it's something to consider for irrigation and utilities, etc.
yeah,
Anton, uh, as you asked that question, we do have a Revit connection through Land Effects, which helps bring in blocks where we could determine scale of box size and it'll do it for us. So
Mhm.
we could share how to do that.
yeah. And I'm opening uh, another project that I was preparing for the next few classes. When we talk about solids, you were talking about this, right?
Right. Yeah. Below surface.
Below surface. And so this is a tree that has a lot of custom parameters. Uh, Includes what is the root ball offset and in the type properties. All of these are custom parameters added.
Cool.
Uh, so if you compare the type properties of this tree with the one I was showing earlier,
Mhm.
this has custom parameters. You want to include plumbing, you want to include FME equipment. And so families can be customized to display both additional graphical elements and metadata that is important for scheduling and um, construction documentation.
Mhm.
And so um, I'll talk more about that. This is another example of a tree that has been modified to represent additional data.
Mhm.
Uh, this is the file we're gonna use next week when we talk about TopOSolid. So I was preparing for that today.
Mhm.
But yeah, we'll have more fun next week. Yeah, so it's that family in comparison with this one, it doesn't have all those properties like I
Right.
show you. And I'm
Right.
gonna show you ways in which you can add properties. You can buy them in bundles, um, but I guess every company is different. They want to see certain information organized in a certain way, and so one of the first tasks when you start with Revit is to decide how data is get organized and displayed in the documentation, and then translate that formatting into the families. And so that's some investment in building the right families so that they represent the right information. And that is an overhead investment, but it's going to help everybody's production, definitely. Um, okay, so it's 7:15. Why don't we have a 15-minute break and we can go for a little bio break or grab a snack or and when we come back, I will continue. I'm going to talk about where to find additional BIM resources, hunting for families. It's like going to the flea market in the web. You find like 70% of the things you see in a flea market you ignore because these are bad things. But sometimes you find Urally, and I'm going to point you to some sites that are pretty good where you can download families. Uh, they and some of the things to be aware when you download content from third parties because they come with all these different type of shit embedded. Um, so I am going to switch up my camera for a little bit, go to a bathroom break, and let's be back at 7:30. All right, see you in a bit. All right, guys, I'm back. Hopefully, I didn't lose you. Um, it's 7:30. I will continue maybe until 8:10, 8:15, and then I'll stop. Uh, it's a long class, I realize, but that's what we sign up for. All right. We know if everybody's in here already. Okay. we were loading families into this site, and I show you ways in which we can bring families from the library into Revit, right? And what I want to show you is where do I get additional content? The content that's provided in this model, it's very short, it's very limited. I only have few pieces of few trees. It's not that many. I don't have any shrubs or uh, and especially when we're new to Revit and we don't have a lot of skills on build them on our own, it's very typical when we search for additional content. So I'm gonna move this here. I'm gonna move this property window. I'm gonna put it here. So before I get going, any questions about what we discussed earlier about the UI, about the loading families, drop them, any reaction? No? All right, let's continue then. To bring additional content into Revit, you can tap into the out-of-the-box library. The out-of-the-box library, it's is not deployed anymore in the local workstation. That's another new directive in Revit. We move away from distributing the content that with the Revit installation, and now we make it available on the cloud. So to access additional pieces of information, additional families into Revit, you go to the Insert tab, and then search for the Load Autodesk family. And this is going to open a web interface that these pieces of families are stored in a server. They're not stored locally. And then you can browse element by category. I mean, the ones we care about are things that are on their site. Here are some families of fences and park benches, islands, precast steps, signs, tree grates, etc. There's a total of 66 elements here. And the way, again, if you want to get here, you go to the Insert tab, Autodesk, Load Autodesk Family. And this is a cloud repository of content. And let's say,
sorry, is the intent to have these as building blocks and then modify them if you want to have more specific details or design related things?
absolutely. Yeah. The idea is that you use if this doesn't match exactly your design intent, it gives you a placeholder, and then you can duplicate a family and modify it as needed. Let's bring a fire hydrant. So the way you do is you select it, load it, and it's now added to the available components in the project. So if you search the project browser and look for the site, now you have fire hydrants here. Click on it, you drag it. and then drop it. The families usually snap to the families that are part of the site category always snap to the top of the surface. Let's bring some other ones. So you go insert, load Autodesk family. You go to sites. You can do multiple at a time. You don't have to do it one by one. So for example, I can bring a catch basin, a bollard, a dumpster, a parking lot, a parking space, the ADA symbol, and then load them. Now all of them are getting transferred from the cloud to the project. And
What's the advantage of pulling in blocks that you know that you'll have to modify versus creating one from scratch?
yeah, so when you load it this way, it's loaded into the project. And so the original one, it's available as something you place in the project. Let's say, example, this bollard is 9-inch diameter, and you want to change it. You want to change the material, or you want to change the height. So what you do is you select the family, you edit it. When you edit a family, you have the family editor. We have an entire class about family editor. But here inside the family editor, you can change properties about it. I can make it larger. I can stretch its height um, by accessing some of the parameters. I selected here, edit the extrusion, and I say it's not 3 feet, it needs to be 5 feet. You can change the material, the diameter, etc., and then you save it as a separate family. You don't replace the original one. And the original name of this was Bollard. I'm gonna call this Bollard 2, and you can save it in either in your project, in a project location, if this family is project specific, or if it's a family you're gonna use over and over from project to project, then save it in a server in the list of uh, uh, libraries for your company, so that you can also share with other users. Uh, Here I'm gonna put it in my desktop, just, and then this family, which is now called Bollard 2, I load it into the project, and now I have a new variation of this family in the project, which is oh, I forgot to rename it. I think this was already called Bollard 2. Notice that it changes. It overrides the other one that was 3 feet, and now all of them are 9 feet. The thing is, open it, saving it with a different name. I didn't save it as a different name. I should have called it Bollard 5 feet or something. The naming convention is important. I'll share with you later naming conventions for families. And then the process in which we collect these families, this also needs to be structured on a company level. Because a lot of us spend time and resources hunting for the right family, making changes and modify it, and making it work for a project. But that family is now can be suitable for other projects as well. And we often forgot to, at the end of a project, let's grab everything that we created that is useful for other projects, review it, have a quality control process to make sure that the parameters are correct, the materials are correct, and then let's save it in a place that we can share it. That is an exercise that we often forgot, but then we are reinventing the wheel every time, because the next time I open a new project, I'm creating a new baller again. And so I think that's not about Revit, that's a human exercise, a management exercise, but it needs to be established as part of the um, activities we do regular on a BIM project. There's a question on how you lock families so that someone cannot modify it. Good question. You cannot. You can, users have the ability to change it within their project. But once, what you can do is that in your server library of components, that's a read-only one. And maybe there's I mean, you should identify within your organization 2 or 3 individuals who are experts in family creation and can validate the content that goes inside the corporate library. And so once the family goes into the server folder, that server folder is read only. You can only load it, but you cannot replace it. And so once you take it out of the library, you can do anything with it, but you cannot edit it. Um,
Unless you save it as something else, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so if a user modify the family by mistake inside a project, you can always go back to the original source and replace it with the original one and return the family to its original condition.
I forgot to ask this question. What if you accidentally delete something in the model and you want to go back? Is there a way to refresh or repeat the last version?
If I delete something in the model, all I can do is undo. But if I delete these things and then I save and close, Revit creates backup copies in the location where I'm saving the file. So notice that right next to my original file, the one I'm editing, I have another backup that is called 001. And so this is a backup copy right before I save. And so you can Revit keep a tab of 3 backup copies, historical backups, that you can always go back in case you want to retrieve information before saving. This is in the context of individual files that haven't been work shared. In a work share environment, you can go up to 30 or 100. In the cloud has infinite storage. And so in the cloud, you can retrieve projects, historic projects from the very beginning. So if if you notice that somebody deleted something and you want to retrieve it later on, like something that was here, and you can go back and retrieve a copy from last week, save it as a separate file, bring the deleted copy to the clipboard, the deleted object, and then paste them into the project. Work share give us more flexibility in restoring versions than you can do on standalone files. All right, so let's bring interesting. Let's bring a few cars. Go to the, again, same thing, insert, load out of this family, and go to the, not the site category, but go to the entourage. And in here, entourage, yes. And let's bring the van. And RPC female, and load it. You can when you load a family and already exists in the project, you have 2 choices. Exist the existing version, replace the geometry, but it keeps any changes in the parameter values. And override the existing version is replace the geometry and the parameter values. Parameter values is the metadata behind it. So I usually use the second one. And so I brought the cars. You're going to find those cars under the category of entourage. So go into the family tree, find the entourage category. Here's the van, delivery van. Drag it and drop it. Um, in Revit, when you place something on the model, you can rotate it by hitting the space bar. Notice that when I hit the space bar, that rotates 90 degrees. The same with the car. You select it, space bar rotates families by 90 degrees. Um, and it's aligned with the project north. And the same with trees. If you want a different orientation, you can select it, a space bar. These delivery van, for example, has, if you access the type properties, edit type, it has materials, right? If I change the material here, it changes for all the vans that have been placed in the project. So when you edit the type properties, it's the equivalent of, if you're in AutoCAD, is the equivalent of bringing a new version of the block, and then that block property propagates everywhere in the project. So the same with type properties. You change it here, you change it for all of the instances of that family that exist in the model everywhere. Let's talk about these guys. So this is actually an ex-employee from Autodesk. When you select her, the name of this female is Jin. Let me show you how you can swap one family from one type to another. So this part of the property window is called the type selector. So remember this because I mention it a lot, type selector. Type selector is a drop-down list of elements of the same category that list allow me to pick a different type and swap it. You can only swap elements of the same categories, meaning that I can only swap entourage elements with entourage elements. I cannot change this person with a tree, for example, or I cannot change this with furniture. And so the way you swap it is that you select the person and then you swap it. And there are different RPC females. This is Kathy. And Cynthia. And this is Tina. Families in Revit always look at you. Like, I'm changing the direction of this. And she's always look at my eyes. Look at. So the families are built to, well, this is a behavior of a view. Families can be set up to always look at your eyes, like Tina is doing to me, or you can change the graphic properties. This is a little advanced, but I can say, okay, instead of always looking at me, just use the render appearance. Let me see if that works. Yeah, now she's no longer looking at me. Now you can look at her in different angles. And so that is a property of a view, and we have an entire class to talk about that. But in the graphic display properties, where it says realistic mode, there's a toggle here that allow me to change the behavior of families as they are rendered. Billboard is all billboard. I mean, always display it looking at the camera. And render appearance means that it will preserve the orientation. I'm going to keep it billboard as it was before, because I like how she's looking at me. All right, so this is how we load content into Revit. And this content is not enough. This content is even in the library of components, if you insert load out of this family, this content is limited, and there's always the need to look for additional content. So I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes just talking through some of the sources, some families that you can download. But beware of something. When you download a family created by third parties, don't load it into the project immediately. Save it, open the family, and review it, how it was built, constructed, and what kind of parameters it is. Because the things you want to check is what units it was created. Sometimes these come from, metric countries, and the sizes are incompatible with the systems we use in the US. The second thing is review the parameters. Sometimes these families are packed with parameters that is just marketing garbage. I mean, these are manufacturers who are trying to sell you their product, and it's embedded with hyperlinks and webs URLs that connect you to their site. And third, review that it meets your documentation standards, because you can bring a tree, for example, into your project, and it may look good in 3D, but it doesn't contain the right information to make it part of a schedule. And so there's going to be an effort to clean the family, remove the parameters that you don't need, add the information that is required to make it compatible with your schedule standards, and then you can place it in the library and load it or distribute, socialize it with the rest of the users. So those are things to be aware when you load for families. Let me share some family sites. The UK has done great strides in institutionalize a national library. The US doesn't have that, and there's nobody in the US working on this problem. The UK has the National Bin Library, which is requirement for all state projects. They provide the family with a consistent type of parameter values that can be used and reused from one project to another one. I'm going to put the link here. Copy. This is the National BIM Library in the UK. What I like about this is that this is the type of content that is used for that is required by the UK government, and therefore is detached from manufacturer information, because they want to, make sure that the content is generic enough to promote competition in the bid process. And so a lot of these are families that are not manufacturer specific. And so here, when I go in that link that I share with you, you can find plants and animals, and here are seeds and bulbs. It does have manufacturers, but it is closed what manufacturer it is, and so then you choose whether you want the manufacturer or not. So on the planting and landscape, it's not that big. It's 183 assets, but they are good enough and they are well constructed. So for example, if this is something you might want to use in a project, you download it. I think you have to create, you can bring it as an IFC. IFC stands for Industry Foundation Class. It's a format for interoperability that makes the family be readable in multiple platforms. It's not just Revit specific. But if you want the Revit one, just download it. Yeah, I need to sign in. You have to create an element ID. I'm not gonna create it here because I don't know if I have. No, I don't have one for me. The same thing. You download it it will be available in your download folder, and then you load it into the project. So I recommend this one because it has some institutionalized governmental process behind it and validate the quality of of this. Another one, and I'm going to put it also in the chat panel, is ARCAT. ARCAT, they started as a provider of manufacturer specifications, and then they expand their business to include. I don't know if you're familiar with this ARCAT. And here you can download typical drawings or BIM objects or specifications. So under BIM objects, again, I think you also have to create an account in order to download stuff. You can search products, let's say for plants, and it give you the CSI section, organized by CSI number. And what I don't like about this is that I don't think they have a quality control process. And so when you download this, it's exactly the same way the manufacturer put it in here. And so visually it looks pretty good. But again, like I said earlier, we need to open it and vet the information that comes within it. And it provides specs, the catalog, product, etc. It's very big, and it's also very manufacturer focused. You can find fountains, drinking fountains. It is all organized by CSI master format. I like it because it has a good resolution visually, but be careful with the information that brings into the project. All right, another one, and this is like the Revit City. Revit City. I'll share the link on the chat panel. Revit City this is a flea market. This is community-based content. So anyone can post anything here. Nobody vetted. This is an effort it's open source. Any user, you and I can post stuff here. So we rely on the generosity of contributors to find content here, but sometimes you find interesting content. So again, you have to register, and then under the download folder, the content is organized as well as in CSI format, and you can search elements by keyword or by the master format it belongs to. So if we're trying to find things for earthwork or irrigation or planting, you'll find it here as well. Oh, I put ARCAT twice, my bad. Control C, Revit City. So again, this is community-based. So be warning there, check everything every time you find something here. Let's look for benches. So I'm just gonna look bench here. And in the keyword, you can search for a specific version. These are all different type of benches created by users like you and I. And park benches. So there's all the different types. It gives you a way to preview it. It doesn't disclose the parameter values, so you have to download it. But the community rank it. When you join, it tells you, oh, this is a good family, and people comment and say this is great, or people comment and no, this is bad. And so log in, join to download. Um, so watch for it. And then two more. This is BIM Smith and BIM Store. These are privately curated content services. Um, and you can tell the difference because they are very nice, very nice websites. And so this is really good quality content. It's it's put in. I think in order to put something in BIM Store, the owners of BIM Store send some of the requirements to the manufacturers so that they work with the manufacturers to make sure that the content is good. And so there's a limited collection that is free, and there is some content that you have to pay. Uh, uh, but these system of roofs, these sections comes already preloaded to be used in a project. So it's really awesome. And the other one, so Beam Store, I'm gonna put it here. Copy Beam Store. And similar to Beam Store, there is Beam Object. I don't have it here, sorry. Beam Object. This used to be an Autodesk company. Autodesk used to offer Beam Objects. It was integrated with Revit before, but then we realized that us getting involved in the business of producing content didn't give us a lot of value. We thought that it was the industry that needed to come up with a way to distribute content. So Beam Object, you have to register as well, and um, it's good content. They give you it ranks content as well. Let's search for some plants. And it give you all the different categories. I think the extent here is much bigger than but Autodesk offer. And so if you're doing a photorealistic representation, this is a good way to bring something that is going to look good in your project. But for for documentation, again, open the family, make sure that it has embedded the parameters you need for your scheduling. So those are 5 sites where you can download information. You can drag in this meeting chat and copy all of them and use it at your own risk. I would say that. Well, big companies have.
Sorry, could you put that one in the chat too?
Oh, the BIM objects, yeah. BIM objects, Control C. BIM objects. There you go. But big companies have invested. Obviously, they have more resources. They back. I worked with HOK 5 years, and they have at a corporate level a title. It was a content administrator, BIM content administrator, and all his job did 24 hours is to receive tickets for content creation that was compatible with HOK standards. And so a PM or a job captain will send a request that he needed, I don't know, he needed a custom bench that looked like this. And so this person, the job of this person was to create that for that person. That was like 5, 6, 7 years ago. I don't know if that role still exists, but there was an there was a structural method by which firms to make sure that the content was good and has good metadata. I think right now it's a luxury to have a person dedicated to this, but somebody has to act or adopt this role. In the case of a medium firm like yours, or small firms, you may have a committee of maybe 6, 7 people who are the most proficient Revit users, and you can establish a task force that is like context harvesting, and you meet regularly to review content requests or content that has been used. And that way you can build your library over time with better content that is relevant and it's aligned with the scheduling requirements. All right, so 5 sources of content, and that content then is loaded into Revit, and you can drag it and drop it into the family. I'm gonna just want to show you the last 2 minutes how you can change the rendering asset. Like this is a family, and it's has the word RCP. RCP stands for realistic photo content or photorealistic content. Realistic photo content, I think that's what it is. It's trade market, trade, uh, it's a trademark by a company called Arc Vision. I'm going to share this link as well with you. Arc Vision is a company that I think is a really good library meant for visualization. Arc Vision, yes. And so for high photorealistic representation in Revit, then this sell content by packages. And so you can buy like packages of 20 bundles of entourage, like 100 people, 100 type of cars, or 50. But the trees, it's the tree one is pretty good. And then it has a plugin for Revit that allow you to integrate it directly. And so these are families that you would use for very specific purposes, a lot of cars, high photorealistic cars. And this is how you may expand your library for different people, different. This is our vision. I'm going to copy these into the chat panel. All right, so I'm gonna. It's 8:10. I think I got you enough. Any question? Any question on families, loading families, placing families, navigating? Next.
Only question I had is when you're downloading or searching for families to download, is there any risk in getting file corruption? And if so, is there a way to audit what you're downloading to mitigate that?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Steelcase has its entire library of cabinets available online. But when you open like a base cabinet from Steelcase, it's an imported CAD file. It wasn't even done with real Revit objects. It looks good in Revit. It's still render and it looks good, but it was made by a questionable process. And so when you open a family, here in Revit, file open, you have an option here that says audit. Audit, what it does is scan all the line of codes associated with that piece of content, and then it fixes if there's any corruption. Or if you cannot fix it, it will tell you, I'm sorry, you cannot, this family is corrupted. So in the process of doing quality control on the content you do, you can open a family, RFA, and I think I have one family here. I have several families here. And I hit audit and open. And that look for the integrity of the file. And in the case of Steelcase, for example, AutoCAD files are even there's an Autodesk product, and I hate that this is happening to us. They are all the representation is imported CAD, and so CAD expand the file size big time because for every entity that is brought in, it creates layers of information that needs to be classified. And so for every single AutoCAD block brought into Revit, is going to be an equal number of layers for each of the instances. And so that increases the file size. And then CAD and Revit historically don't read very well. Revit can read vanilla CAD, a CAD file that has no, how do they call it, objects created by third-party add-ons. And specialty contractors develop their own CAD tools. Sometimes they run on top of AutoCAD. And then all that geometry created with that special add-on is something that Revit cannot interpret. And because it cannot refresh and it cannot get a hold of that object, sometimes that is a risk for corruption. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks for asking, Anton.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So any other question? All right. So I am going to stop the broadcast, and when I close this session, the recording is going to be in Oxman College, and then I'll see you guys on Tuesday next week. We're going to start creating something and setting up a project. So that's the topic for next class. Shared coordinates, big topic.